Hello everyone, Yuval Teren is here, a motivational speaker and influential leadership trainer. And today we have a very special guest. Her name is Michaela Peck, and she knows how to make you change your life. And she does it through hypnosis, which we're going to dive a little bit more and learn about the power of hypnosis and how you can apply those tools into your life and transform the way you think, speak, lead, and communicate. So I'm definitely ready to begin. So Michaela, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Yuval. I am very happy to be here, and I was honored you asked me to be here today.
I'm honored that you came. I'm very excited to see where our journey will take us today. So maybe you can give us a deeper understanding of who you are, what are you doing, and what are our listeners about to learn?
Yeah, absolutely. So the short story we'll dive into a little bit more, but I am a certified hypnotherapist. I got certified a couple years ago at a school in California. I really just I came from a corporate background, corporate consulting background, and I reached a point in my life where I just wanted more for myself. I wanted to connect with myself in different ways, and I naturally found the path of hypnotherapy. And through my studies, I really learned the power of hypnosis and how incredible of a tool it is to really help us connect with ourselves, overcome limiting beliefs, different patterns that we have that feel like they're unbreakable. So I really just wanted to spend some time today and really dive into, my personal story and see if it, resonates with anyone and how I've used hypnosis myself and just how powerful of a tool it is can be to help other people.
Our listeners probably hear hypnosis, and some of them. So I'm as a hypnotist, I know that some people imagine hypnosis as a mind control thing, like they see in the movie, the person with the watch, the evil person with the watch, making people do whatever he wants. Um, and I want to maybe define a little bit of hypnosis for the audience, as maybe you can share with us how do you see hypnosis, so our listeners can actually understand in simple words what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. A simple word is hard. I feel like even the experts are still trying to define really what hypnosis is. And you're right, there are so many misconceptions with understanding it. I think people are terrified that they're going to lose control and do something really embarrassing on stage. I think that's the most common misconception. The best way that I have found to describe it is that it's a really just an absorbed state of attention, and that attention is inward versus outward. And what I mean by that is you're focusing more on your thoughts, your feelings. You're really turning your attention inward and understanding, what's going on within your body and your mind versus outward, right? You're shutting off the external environment, you're shutting off distractions, which then frees up so many resources in your mind to really focus on creativity and learning. Like it really expedites the learning process. And I think that's such an easy way, of describing it's just an absorbed state of attention. And I mean, there's so many different ways that people could dive into the technical definition, kind of more the mystical definitions. But I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. So basically, in simple words, it's just a focused attention state of mind. So it's just a state of mind that people go into. Easy and simple. So maybe you could share with us how your journey began with hypnosis and what brought you into learning it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a little bit of a long story, so I'll try to keep it somewhat relevant for the listeners. I guess the really the starting point is I always felt really disconnected from myself. Like as a kid, I always just felt disconnected. I always just felt really insecure. And I didn't really understand that, right? When you're a little kid, you don't really have the wherewithal, you don't really have that awareness of like, why do I feel the way that I feel? And I think my whole life, I kind of just grew up, those insecurities were getting bigger, the disconnection was getting bigger. I felt like I was always wearing a mask and I was trying so hard to be someone that I wasn't. And maybe even a better way of phrasing that is I was trying so hard to be who I was naturally. but somehow down the line, I convinced myself that I didn't have these characteristics, that I had a certain personality type. So I carried that with me really through the better half of my 20s. I want to say around like 25 was when I really decided to look inward and start figuring out what is going on with some of my narratives, some of my insecurities. And at the same time, I actually really was going through that phase of what do I want to do with my life? I think a lot of people ask that question about their career on what is it that I want to do? What's my life's work? I was working in corporate consulting. So I was following the very traditional 9 to 5 path. I never questioned that there were other options. It was always this is what you do, you climb the corporate ladder. And I reached a point in my life, like, there's just no way that this is all that there is. Like, there's just no way. And so I was kind of going through this inner awakening of who do I want to be? Who am I? And what do I want to do with my life? Which is a lot of questions. And I know I'm not alone in that sentiment. I think a lot of people go through that, and I hear it all the time. And the short version of my story is I actually thought real estate was going to be my passion. For real estate was my, ticket out of corporate. And I took a huge risk. I kind of just followed this advice of where are your passions at the moment? What are you excited about? What is lighting you up? So I really just dove in that, and real estate at the time was that thing that lit me up. And so I pursued it. I bought a house. I bought a house across the country from a state that I wasn't living in. And I did this really, really crazy thing. And I was so proud of myself for doing it. And on the other side, once I closed and I started spending money on the renovation, I felt like my whole life almost imploded. And so I was really caught in this phase of I'm clearly becoming someone, I'm unlocking something, I'm taking all these risks, I'm stepping into myself, but I'm so overwhelmed by everything that's coming up. There's so much coming up. I don't know how to navigate this. And so it really started with me working on myself and just wanting to become a different person and having a tool to really work through what was coming up through taking all these risks and following my passions and trying to be who I knew I could be. And that led me to finding an app that was hypnosis. I'll pause there, Yuval, and see if you had any questions there.
So I'm curious, you mentioned at the beginning of your story that you weren't, I'm not sure exactly of the same words that you used, but something like you were not the person that you were supposed to be. So I feel like our listeners and, many people find themselves as, I'm not living the person that I'm supposed to be, but who am I supposed to be? So it's a question that many people have in their life. And I'm curious, how did you know that, first of all, how did you realize that you're not the person that you were born to be or meant to be? And what made you shift and become that person? How were you able to make the shift and become the person that you were born to be?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And I think what I had said was I was trying so hard to become or to act who I naturally was. And I have this saying about our fears and insecurities are portals into our transformation. And I think where you have those biggest fears and what your biggest insecurities are on the other side of it is telling you where your power lies. And maybe it helps giving an example of that. I always had this huge insecurity about, you know, social events and talking to people and communicating, right? Like I really felt I didn't know how to communicate with people. I felt like I didn't know how to connect with people. There was something wrong with me. And I felt this my whole life and I carried that with me. But on the other side of it, I really desired to be this center of attention, this like life of the party kind of person. And so there was such a disconnect that I actually was really aware of that, okay, I so desperately want to be this person, but it is the hardest thing in the world for me. I feel anxious. I feel insecure the second I have to have a conversation with someone. All these stories were coming up. a myriad of different insecurities on that topic. And so when I really sat with that, it's, that saying about your insecurities and fears are your portal. I sat with my discomfort and I really took a look at, okay, there's clearly a story here that's telling me that I have nothing interesting to say. I don't know how to speak to people. It's me, blah, 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 blah. So I really just sat with that discomfort and took it and ran with it. And I really used the hypnosis and the hypnotherapy as the tool to help me get over it. I used it to help me understand what are the stories that I'm telling myself. What are the beliefs that I have around communicating and talking to people? And, that the story that came up for me was that I had nothing interesting to say. Oh, it's not safe for me to share my voice. It's not okay for me to be loud. And that was kind of the narrative that I carried with me my whole life. And I had this big kind of aha moment of, oh, okay, so my subconscious believes that it's not okay for me to share my voice, that it's not okay to be loud, to take up space. So what's going to happen? Naturally, I'm not going to take up space. Naturally, I'm going to be quiet. Naturally, I'm going to be reserved. And so is this okay? We know how the subconscious mind works is that, and for anyone listening that might not, it carries your belief system. It runs on autopilot. It runs automatically. And so you do things without really understanding why you're doing it. And so I hope that answers your question that I really started with that disconnect, leaning into where I felt uncomfortable and sat with that and understood what stories were driving that.
So it really leads us into the action of hypnosis, as you spoke about beliefs and about the story that we tell ourselves. So we have certain beliefs in life that we basically live based on them, whether we believe that we can do something or can't do something, whether we um, find ourselves a certain identity that we live by, and also the stories that we share with ourselves, that we tell ourselves um, about things that maybe things are so hard or things are so easy. And it changes our whole experience towards the thing that we're doing. So, how can people use tools from hypnosis or maybe ideas from hypnosis to change those beliefs, limiting beliefs that they have, and the stories that they have to build better ones and more effective ones?
Yeah. So at the beginning, we were giving that definition of what hypnosis is. And I think you made a good point that it's really just a state of mind. So hypnosis is just the tool to create that state of mind of absorbed attention. And so hypnosis itself doesn't create this change. It's not going to be the all of a sudden you're in hypnosis and all of a sudden you're a different person. It's creating that state of mind that allows you to create the change. And I mean, there's so many techniques, and every practitioner of hypnotherapy really just uses their own techniques and kind of puts their own spin to it. I'm a really big believer of once you're in that state, you have a direct line of communication with your subconscious. So what that means is that all that conscious chatter, all that guessing, all those little voices in your mind are kind of pushed off to the side, and you have a direct line to get answers directly from your subconscious. So that's why I love it so much. I felt like in my personal journey of figuring out what was going on, I mean, it's really easy to get caught in this loop of self-analysis and, analyzing what you do and why you do it. And what I love so much about the hypnosis is that you're getting answers directly from the source. And so I love to use it and once you're in that state, asking the right questions, right? It's okay, if you're not getting the right answers, you're not asking the right questions. So it's using the power of suggestion in conjunction with hypnosis to really get the answers that you're looking for. So I think starting with what is it that you actually believe? What's the topic that you feel is holding you back? And what does your subconscious mind actually believe about that? What are the stories that you're telling yourself? And once you understand that, the change itself can actually be really easy, right? You understand what language your mind's using, what words your mind's using. You understand, and once you understand that, you understand what it needs to hear to change it. And then it becomes this beautiful partnership between the practitioner and the individual of, oh, okay, wait, the story actually doesn't make sense. let me tell a new one. Oh, it thinks this, like that's insane. Like let's tell it this one instead. And so you understand what actually is going on behind the scenes.
Do you remember maybe a specific story that you had in your life that you changed the story and your life changed based on that story?
I have so many examples. I kind of alluded to one before about I had this kind of this fear of talking and communicating. And I had this huge fear and belief that I had nothing interesting to say. It was like, "Oh, you have nothing interesting to say. You're not funny. No one cares." And that came from, the reason why doesn't honestly matter at the end of the day. Why, where it came from is just kind of background information. But I found out through hypnosis and doing a session myself that I had this narrative that I have nothing interesting to say. And so when I got out of the session, I had this like increased awareness. I had that answer. I was like a no doubt that that is a story that I tell myself. And I started to identify how many times a day I was telling that to myself. It was like this crazy level of awareness. And then so I started to catch myself more and more when I'm having conversations or I'm presenting. And it's like, wait, I actually have so many things to say. And a lot of it's interesting. Like, oh, I like how my mind works. I like that my mind can jump from topic to topic to topic and somehow make it all make sense. Like, oh, it is interesting. And I kind of had this like epiphany. And it all started with me understanding what that narrative really was. I think what I see all the time is that people guess on what they think it is. They think they know what they believe, but it usually is a different story. And so when I had that awareness, I was like, "Oh my god." And so, then my world started opening up. I started being asked to be on podcasts and, other opportunities to share my insights and perspectives because I started to believe that I had something to say.
It's amazing how shifting the stories shifts the whole energy. And energy is something that is very important. The way we think changes the whole energy around us. We're going to be with more motivation. The way we speak changes
Mm,
because our tonality would be different. Our body language would be different. So everything changes once we change our mindset. And it's something very important to remember that change is simple, but to realize until the moment that, all right, now I need to make the change, that's what takes us time sometimes. So being aware of those stories and being aware that our mind have certain functions that tells us we can tell ourselves stories and build beliefs so we can actually shift the reality that we live in. So I want to look about language for a moment, because in hypnosis there is a lot of emphasis about language and the way we communicate and the way we speak, and words has a lot of power. As when I work with people, I call it the art of subconscious communication, because we communicate all the time, but paying attention to those subtle details of the tonality, the body language, the facial expressions, and how each one impacts ourselves and builds assumptions, it's an art to understand it, and but it's so fun to know how to do it. So I want to speak about the words for a moment and how can people use maybe their language to build better habits, better mindsets, to be more influential people, better communicators, um, and live and reach their potential by doing it.
yeah, absolutely. I love how you call it the art of communication. I actually use a very similar phrase as well. That really is what it is, right? I think, I think to start with your question, I think it's really just starting to get awareness and have this conscious awareness of what words you're using, especially what phrases you're using. I hear a lot of the time people use these common phrases, and your mind is so literal, your subconscious mind is so literal, so it takes these phrases and it runs with it. And so I think the first step is really just starting to listen to what words are you using to describe your situation, right? And in itself can give you so much clarity on how you actually feel about something. I think an easy example, because sometimes putting examples helps people. Like if you think about the topic of money, and I'm deep diving into this topic, so it's kind of top of the mind at the moment. But a lot of people talk about money all day long and they make comments all day long using their words to say, I don't have enough. It could never, like, I could never be rich. I'm so broke. Those are all words that you're choosing to use. And the more you continue to use those words, that will continue to be your experience. And so I think it's just really starting there. It's understanding how you're describing your experience. Is that how you're describing it, what you want it to be? If it's not, then you should really sit with that and start to look at, okay, what do I believe and how can I talk about that differently? It's actually really simple. I say simple because sometimes people might hear that and say, no, if it was so simple, we'd all be different. But I think it's making the decision is simple to start listening to yourself differently.
Some people would say, all right, so by changing my words and saying, um, I'm not broke, I can't be rich, or those things, all right, now I'm going to have lots of money. So I think it's very cool thing, because it doesn't mean that, all right, now money will fall from the sky. But what it does mean is that your mind would be open to find solutions on how to get there. Because if you're focusing on what you can't do, that's only where you can reach. But if you focus on what you want to do and open for new possibilities, you'll be surprised how our mind can find solutions of getting there. And that changes the whole picture, the whole reality of how do we live our life and how do we fulfill our potential. It's the journey that we take ourselves, and the journey determines based on our thoughts, and that's where it begins. So I love it. It's such a fun thing to play with our thoughts, shifting
Yeah.
them and shifting our reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to add, because I think it's an important point that you mentioned. I think with that example with the money, right? All of a sudden, people are going to start saying, "Oh, okay, well, I'm wealthy," and there's going to be a layer where your body does not believe that, your subconscious mind doesn't believe it, and then so people are going to hear this and say, "Well, it didn't work for me. My situation didn't change. This is all, this isn't correct information." And I think the point that I really want to emphasize is that there's this concept called like positive thinking, positive talking, and I think a lot of people will try to use positive language to override what they're feeling. And I just want to emphasize that part of the process is understanding and using everything as information. Look at the words that you're using to describe your situation. Notice the sensations that are coming up as you talk about it. If you're talking about money and you start to feel anxious or you start to notice these words, don't automatically just say, I'm now wealthy is not going to change it. It's part of the process. And I just think it's so important to emphasize that it really is not a hard process, but people make it harder for themselves. And they kind of skip that part of, okay, I have this belief that money doesn't come freely and I'm poor and I'm broke and I'm just going to positive think over it. You kind of have to dive in between a little bit. And I hope that makes sense, Yuval, if you understand what I'm saying there.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I want to say as well that people that have um, those, once you're aware of those sensations, it's a very important thing to be aware of it. It's such a great point. And in hypnosis, something that I love to do is to change people's associations towards the thing that they're having. So if you're thinking about, for example, you mentioned money. So if someone is thinking about money and it gives them a negative sensations, I'm always curious, what do they imagine when they see money? Is it some greedy person that takes it all, or is it possibilities of achieving their dreams, or what do people imagine when they see that thing? And it could be for everything. It could be for um, running and going to the gym, or it could be for doing whatever they dream of, or fulfilling their dreams, or achieving a certain goal. So think about, what do you see when you think about that thing that you're having trouble with doing? And you'll discover that your mind doesn't make it so attractive to get there. And by shifting that image in your mind, it will make it more fun to reach that goal. So make sure that your thoughts, it goes back to our thoughts and our imagination, that it by shifting our words, the images in our mind, it shifts our whole reality. And I find it fascinating, which in hypnosis, we can use language and we can use communication and and a state of relaxation to access more of who we are and access more of what we can do in our potential. So it's a very fun process. So I definitely, if you haven't experienced it, I encourage our listeners to experience it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's this teaching that the subconscious mind only sees in images. So when you can tap into creating these images in yourself, hear the words you're saying, create these images. Like I love that you shared that because that's how the mind sees things. And so in hypnosis, you really can learn how to make those images so vivid and real, and it becomes your entire experience. And then you get into the whole topic of, your internal world then creates your external world. And if you can make it so real internally by just so simply visualizing, that becomes your experience. And I just love that teaching so much. And the hypnosis is what allows that to become so vivid. I know I work with a lot of people and they always share with me like, "Oh, I'm not a visual person. I'm not a visual person." There are ways to guide an individual to become this really vivid person, and then they have this crazy vivid experience just because they created that right state of mind, and then they had this huge experience that came from that because they were able to change elements of what they're seeing, and I just think it's so powerful, and it really does emphasize that it's not that hard. Like, it's really not that hard. It's just a matter of educating how to create that change, and something is so fun as creating images in our mind. Like, that's all it really takes kind of at the end of the day.
Yes, something I think something very easy to remember is that our mind is something that we mentioned earlier is that our mind don't think about hypnosis and our mind as a big thing that maybe it's impossible to access or I don't understand it. Think about it as simple functions, as just by shifting our thoughts, shifting the patterns, shifting the way we think, it changes, it just gives us a little gap into finding solutions, finding a better way, finding more opportunities, more options. It just opens up a door for more possibilities. It doesn't mean that things will happen now immediately, but it gives you the opportunity to shift and it changes the whole body. There was an experiment that I read about a long time ago that by thinking, waking up in the morning and thinking, all right, today I'm going to make $1 million, your whole system, your whole body, everything moves towards making that $1 million. So something physically changes, everything shifts. So our mind has a lot of power into taking us to whatever direction we want to go. Um, Michaela, I'm curious, maybe you have a quote or something that inspires you in your life. Maybe a quote that you love to, that inspired you in your life to become the best version of yourself and become the person that you were born to be. Something that you can share
Ooh.
with us today.
That's a great question. I did not prepare a favorite quote. Something that's coming to my mind, and I'm just trusting it's part of this answer to share. It was something Albert Einstein said, and it was, what was it? It was it's something alluding to, and I'm butchering the actual quote itself, but it was something about the fact that people do the same thing expecting different results is the definition of insanity. And that always struck a chord with me, and it still comes up when I'm reading my different books. I always see that come up, and it struck a chord with me of I was trying so hard to become a different person. I was trying so hard to unlock different versions of myself. I was working so hard on trying to quote unquote fix myself, but I was doing the same things. Like I kept doing the same things. Clearly, that's not working. And so that quote, we keep doing the same things, expecting different results. I needed to change something. I needed to find a different tool, a different modality. Because it was a little while before I really found hypnosis in my own personal growth story. But I kept doing the same things, hoping for something different. And I think that is something I just kind of carry with me. It's if I'm not getting the results that I want, if I'm not having the experience that I want, and there's, of course, a layer of like divine timing, right? Of, okay, maybe it's just not the right time of it. But when I feel like I'm not getting what I want and I'm not who I want to be, and I keep doing the same things day in, day out and feel that feeling of I'm frustrated, I don't feel like I'm making progress, that stuck cycle, I sit with myself and I say, okay, what do I need to do differently? What's something, is it take a step back? Do I need to, I mean, there's so many ways that that can go, but I think that's probably the one quote that really stuck with me. And I don't know if that's inspirational. It was for me. I know he's, calling people insane, but
I, I love it. It makes life much more simple. Just being aware. If you're doing the same things, you'll get the same results. You want to have new results, change what you're doing. And as we explore today, by changing our thoughts, it actually can give you new results in your life, better results, and take you to the life you want to live, and as well be the person that you were born to be. And it's interesting that that's how we begin our journey. So who's the person that we were born to be? And it's something to ask ourselves. And if we know that now we're not fulfilled, we're not reaching our potential, something feels a bit off, then it means that our mind knows what's right. So just do that thinking with ourselves, and doing hypnosis and someone that guides you in the process, it makes it even easier and faster. But even with ourselves, we can close our eyes, meditate on that idea of who's the person I was born to be, and how do I vision my life, and what do I see in the future, and what's the future that I see, how the person, the me that I'm reaching my fullest potential, how do I speak, behave, talk, what do I wear? Go to those details and it just opens up the mind. I love it. So many great insights, Michaela.
Yeah.
Um, so I wanna wrap our episode today and tell our listeners that whatever you do, make sure to keep your thoughts positive, focus towards the future. And if you got the same results as Michaela shared with us, if you got the results that you don't want to get, just change what you did until now. Makes life much more easier. Anything else you want to share with us, Michaela?
I think the final thing that's coming to me that might be helpful, and it's advice that I'm really living in myself right now, and it seems to be a theme, is in kind of going at this phrase of the harder you try, the harder something is. And I think that really encapsulates my story of trying so hard to be who I'm not, trying so hard to be who I naturally was, and creating all this resistance, unnecessary resistance for myself. And that's a common thing we do in the hypnosis too. It's the harder you try something, the harder something is. And I just want to share that as kind of my last bit of, wisdom, insight, whatever you want to call it, is that things are not supposed to be hard when things are right for you. And what you are supposed to do is supposed to be so easy. It's supposed to be so divine. It's supposed to be so aligned that things fall into your lap. And so when you start to feel that resistance, it's information to really sit with it and say, okay, instead of beating up against a wall and then creating all these feelings of frustration and stuck, sit with that resistance and sit with what thoughts are coming up, sit with what feelings are coming up, and use that as information to work through using tools like hypnosis instead of continuing to try and just push through. And I think that phrase of the harder you try, the harder something is, like when you truly let go and let the reins be released, everything flows naturally and you just allow yourself, your natural self to just shine through. And it really is sometimes it could be easier said than done, and I still have moments myself where I have to really sit with that myself, but I do think that truly is like the key to connecting with yourself and just allowing your potential to really shine through. So I just wanted to say that kind of final quote there.
Sometimes as people, we grab onto things, and letting go definitely makes it much more easier and simple to find the right thing for us. Love it. So Michaela, I want to thank you for being with us today and sharing so many great insights and inspire us with your story and your ideas of how we can become the best version of ourselves. So thank you very much for being with us today.
No, thank you so much for asking me to be here. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
How can our listeners find more about you and your
Yeah,
work?
so my website for I do offer one-on-one sessions. So my website is just michaelapeckhypnotherapy.com. And I have Instagram, just Michaela at Michaela Peck.
That's great. Sounds good. Hey, thank you.
Thank you.